All right, we are looking at Math Lesson 17 for Module 4. Our objective today is that we will be able to prove with evidence the big idea that fractions and decimals are related by using multiplication. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with your warm-up. Take a minute, go through these problems, and what you're going to do is you're going to rewrite the fraction as a decimal. If you need help in using the place value chart, please be my guest. Pause the video, go through the warm-up, and when you come back, we shall correct. Okay, you should be finished by now, or hoping to be finished, or you didn't do anything and you just want to see what the answers are. So here we go. 1 over 10 is the same as 0.1, 1/10. 2/10 is the same as 0.2. 8/10 is the same as 0.8. 3/10 is the same as 0.3. 7/10 is the same as 0.7. 1/100th is the same as 0.01. 2/100ths is the same as 0.02. 7/100ths is the same as 0.07. 9/100ths is the same as 0.09. 12/100ths is the same as 0.12. 15/100ths is the same as 0.15. 38/100ths is the same as 0.38. 45/100ths is the same as 0.45. And 93/100ths is the same as 0.93. Okay. Now I'm going to demonstrate in these problem sets, these sets of 3, how we are going to look at the relationship of fractions and decimals. So here we have in problem A, 0.01 times 4. So this is 1/10 times 4. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to rewrite, take my light blue, I'm going to rewrite my decimals into fractions. So this looks like 1/10 times 4. I want to do the same thing with my second problem. So this would be 1/10. Oops. Let's go back to light blue. 1/10 times 2, and if I follow the same pattern for my last problem here, I have 1/100th times 6. So if we go ahead and look at multiplying by a whole number, we know that we put the whole number over 1 and go ahead and multiply. So I would get 4/10. Here I would get 2/10, and here I would get 6/100ths. Now, if I took my place value chart and I looked at 4 whole numbers, which is what I would have, and I multiply by 1/10, this means I'm going to move my decimal over one place. So if I'm going to shift over one place, I would shift over to the tenths, and this would move here, so we would have 4/10. It would be the same if I had to and then I simply wanted to multiply by 1/10. I'm going to push my decimal over once, so that means I'm shifting over one time, and that would be 2/10. And then again, if I'm looking at 6. I have 6 ones. And I'm actually moving my decimal over twice. 1, 2. So I'm going to shift over 2 places. So that means I'm shifting not just to tenths, but over to hundredths. My decimal stays here, but I put a 0 there, so that would be 6 hundredths. Right? So these are the same, 2 tenths and 2 tenths, 4 tenths and 4 tenths. Okay. Next, I have 1/100th times 1/100th, 2 tenths times 1/100th, and 1 2/10 times 1/10. So again, I'm going to make sure that I write these out as fractions. So 1/10 times 1/10, 2 tenths times 1/10. And now this is 1 2/10. So what I can do is I can write this 1 2/10 would look like this, 1 2/10. But to make the multiplication easier, I'm going to actually convert this into an improper fraction. 1 2/10 is the same as 12/10 times 1/10. So here we have 1/100th. Here we have 2/100ths. And here we have 12/100ths. I'm actually going to change this to match colors. Okay, if I want to look at this a little bit closer, I'm going to go ahead and see that I have 1/10, and I'm going to multiply by another tenth. So I'm actually going to move that decimal over, move it over once. I fill in, and I have 1/100th, which is the same as 1/100. Remember, this is ones, this is tenths, that's hundredths. Same thing. I start with 1/10, but I'm going to double it and move it over once. So I'm going to multiply by 2 and move it over. Then I'm going to end up with 2/100ths. And then lastly, I'm going to look at this as I have 1 2/10. And I'm going to move it over. I'm going to multiply by 1/10. So everything's going to shift over one place. That gives me 12/10. I'm sorry, 12/100ths. Okay, again, we're going to go ahead. We're going to multiply, and we're going to change these decimals into fractions. So this would be 1/10 times 1/100th, 5/10 times 1/100th, and 1 5/10 would be the same as 15/10 times 1/100th. So here I would get 1,000th. 1,000th is equal to 0.001. Here I would get 5,000ths, which is equal to 0.005. And lastly, when I multiply, I get 15,000ths, which is equal to 0.015. Lastly, in my problem set, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at 7 times 2/10, 7/10 times 2/10, and 7/100ths times 2/10. So the numbers all look the same, but you have to remember where the place value is. So our first problem looks like this: 7 times 2/10. Our second problem is 7/10 times 2/10. And our last problem is 7/100ths times 2/10. Remember, when we multiply by a whole number, we put it over 1. So this would give me 14/10. 14/10 would be the same as 1 and 4/10, or 1 and 4/10. When I multiply my second problem, I get 14/100ths. And when I multiply my last problem, I get 14,000ths. Now it is your turn. Look at the problem set, pause the recording, and go ahead and try to work out these problems. When you're ready to correct, press play, and I'll show you the answers. Okay, you either finished and finished well, or did none of the problems and just want to see the answers. So here we go. We have 7 times 3/10, which is 7/1 times 3/10, which would give you 21/10. 21/10 would be the same as 21 divided by 10. So we should end up with 2.1, or 2 1/10. 7/10 times 3/10 equals 21/100. So this would be 0.21. And lastly, we have 7/100ths times 3/10. Again, we're still getting 21. However, we have 21,000ths, which as a decimal would be 0.021. Okay, next, 1 and 3/10 times 5. So we're going to change 1 and 3/10 to 13/10 times 5. We're going to put that 5 over 1. So we have 13 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So that gives us 65/10. You could have cross-canceled. 5 goes into 5 once. 10 goes into 5 twice. And you could have had also 13/2. In any case, we shall look at 65/10 would be 6 and 5/10. 13 over 2, you would simply divide. 13 divided by 2, which is 6. You subtract 6 and 1/2, which is the same as 6.5. Next we have 1 and 3/10, which is 13/10 times 5/10. So again, 13 times 5, I'm going to use this same number as 65, but now we have 65 over 100, which would make this 65 hundredths. If you cross-canceled, you would get 13 over 20, but to make it as a decimal, you'd have to multiply this by 5 to get to the hundredths. Lastly, we have 13 hundredths times 5/10. I'm going to keep this same 65, and now we have thousandths, so this would be 0.065. Now you can go along to the exit ticket, put in your work, and I wish you the best of luck. Bye for now.